Good morning. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I hope everyone's ready for a good day, or those of you who are watching this instead of being in the classroom are getting ready for a good day. You're probably going to hear a dog barking. You'll probably hear my neighbors talking. You may even hear me slurp some Earl Grey tea because I am feeling oh so British as we talk about Macbeth Part 4. Quick reminder that today, Wednesday and Friday, we're talking about Macbeth. The quiz is Friday, 20 questions matching, and we will start King Lear in case you did not get depressed enough by Othello, as I've just depressed myself by seeing I didn't italicize the title of the play, Othello. One of the great things about Shakespeare is his language. And one of the sad things of the past 20 years of my life is that when I was in Philadelphia for the debate nationals, I stumbled. We held the finals and the award ceremony in a big theater, and the theater was home to all sorts of productions, including several Shakespearean productions. And I bought a coffee mug full of Shakespearean insults, and the mug eventually broke. But I think that we should always think about Shakespeare's insults, and we should get back to using some of those great insults. And so, for example, when Macduff Jr. is about to get murdered and he yells, "Thou liest, thou shag-eared villain," it just strikes me that calling people shag-eared villains is something that needs to come back. I hope you all think so too. Let's move on with it, shall we? I've asked you guys to come up with 6-word stories. I haven't found a complete 6-word story that I feel comfortable with on Macbeth that I can think of, but I certainly found a couple of 6-word character sketches. Full of Scorpions is my mind. Certainly that's what's happening in the latter half of the play for Macbeth. Things begun bad make themselves strong by ill is not necessarily a 6-word story, but it certainly sums up the play fairly short. I think this is the 8-word story. Okay. A wayward son, spiteful and wrathful, I think certainly is a 6-word character sketch. Who loves for his own ends, certainly is a 6-word character sketch, and that could apply to either Macbeth or Lady Macbeth. And then there's the 5 words that the witches apply to Macbeth. Something wicked this way comes. And I think it's important to think about the witches, the embodiment of wickedness, are calling Macbeth wicked. Oh, by the way, this was a Ray Bradbury short story, I believe, and a movie as well. The titles come from all over. One of the things I think we need to look at here is the reversal. Okay. Macbeth is telling Lady Macbeth, I'm going to start doing stuff. I'm going to kill people. Lady Macbeth is the one asking what's to be done. And Macbeth is the one saying, I've got this. I've got this. Remember when Lady Macbeth was asking for, night to show up? Now Macbeth is asking for, come sealing night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day. One of the other things we've seen before is up on the first line on the right-hand side. Remember when, Othello called Desdemona a wretch, and it was a term of endearment? Here, too, we have a term of endearment. Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. I'm pretty sure that if I called my wife dearest Chuck, I would get chucked out the door. Sorry, I had to do the bad pun. I apologize. I had to do the bad pun. As we go back to the night again, remember, the night's black agents to their praise do rouse. The idea of appealing to night, not the day, the idea of appealing to night. It's what Lady Macbeth did earlier. It's what Macbeth is doing now, and we're starting to see these roles reverse. Yes, she has to cover for him when he sees Banquo's ghost. But remember, he's the one who hired the murderers. He's the one who decided to kill Banquo and Fleance. So he's the one taking charge. He's still not a perfect murderer, but he's getting pretty good. All right. Notice that he is taking over. I hear it, by the way. They're talking about Macduff, but I will send. There's not a one of them, but in his house I keep a servant feed. Now, please remember, there has to be some time that's elapsed from when he becomes king to when he's had the banquet to when he's killed Banquo, so that he can start, having spies in Macduff's house. I don't think, this happened overnight. So the idea of double time might come into play here as well. We talked about that in Othello. Notice that he is the one who says, I will go to the weird sisters. I am bent to know by the worst means, the worst. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. Remember when Lady Macbeth said, Thou lackest the will to catch the nearest way. For mine own good, all causes shall give way. He seems to be catching it. And notice, he has decided, I am in blood stepped so far that should I wade no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er. Strange things I have in head that will to hand, which must be acted ere they be scanned. I'm going to do stuff. There's nothing that's going to stop me from doing stuff. I've gone in to the deep end. I might as well just keep walking. If I turn around and repent and go back, it's going to be just as difficult as if I keep walking. In other words, he's taking charge of his own destiny. He's become much more hard-hearted than he was when we first saw him with Duncan. All right. And if anything looks like a 180, I think this speech gives it to us. Time, thou anticipatest my dread exploits. The flighty purpose never is o'ertook unless the deed go with it. From this moment, the very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand. And even now, to crown my thoughts with acts, be it thought and done. In other words, the things that I'm going to think about are the things I'm going to do. And there's purpose that you think about, but it's never overtaken, it's never done unless the deed goes with it. And then he gets specific. The castle of Macduff I will surprise, seize upon Fife, give to the edge of the sword his wife, his babes, and all unfortunate souls that trace him in his line. No boasting like a fool. This deed I'll do before this purpose cool. Remember when Lady Macbeth says, I take the baby and bash its brains out. Okay, he's not going to bash the brains out, but he's certainly going to kill it. Or hire it done. So we can see that this is a 180. Lady Macbeth said he didn't have it in him. We're seeing that he does have it in him. She has created what she thought couldn't be done. If murdering children is not difficult enough to negotiate with, and let's be honest, murdering children is something that, in a more liberal setting, I might have to have a trigger warning. I think there's some tough negotiating with this speech. Scale of dragon, tooth of wolf, witch's mummy, maw and gulf of the ravened salt sea shark, root of hemlock digged in the dark, liver of blaspheming Jew. It's a chunk of anti-Semitism. And again, Shakespeare lived in a time full of anti-Semitism. And scholars argue frequently about anti-Semitic behavior in Shakespeare. And I think, we have all of that in several plays that we're not going to read. Certainly Merchant of Venice comes to mind immediately. We also have Nose of Turk and Tartar's Lips. Again, we're talking about a racial, a depiction of the appearance of the Turk. We're talking about people who were probably followers of Islam at the time. All right. And these things are being mixed in with a babe that was strangled by a prostitute and left in a ditch. There's a lot of evil implied with these things. And I think we have to deal with and negotiate with the anti-Semitism and the racism that's here. Perhaps we can explain it away by saying the witches are the ultimate evil and the witches are the ones doing it. And so that everybody saw that this was an evil. And that, mummies, or not mummies because it's a witch's mummy, but the scale of the dragon wasn't necessarily evil. I don't know. This is a tough one we have to negotiate with a little bit. How do we deal with this? We talked about it several times. And again, I just want to point it out. In class, we'll probably discuss it a little bit as we go. How do we deal with this anti-Semitism, just like we dealt with the misogyny, just like we dealt with the racism in Othello? Banquo proves to be a smart prophet. The witches make this prophecy. The following through on the prophecy creates the tragedy. We're going to continue to wonder and continue to talk about, did Macbeth act on his own, or did he act because the witches prompted him? But Banquo says, "'Tis strange and oft time to win us to our harm. The instrument of darknesses tell us truth, win us with honest trifles, and betray us in deepest consequence." The first aberration says, "Beware Macduff." The second aberration says, "The power, laugh to scorn the power of man, for none of woman born shall harm Macbeth." Macbeth automatically is going to say, "Why do I have to beware Macduff?" But remember, they're going to tell us truths, and they're going to win us with honest trifles, and betray us in deepest consequence. And then finally, Macbeth shall never vanquished be, until great Birnam Wood to high Dunsinane Hill shall come against him. Birnam Wood was a forest. Dunsinane Hill was a long ways from the forest. Forests can't walk. But we know, or we ought to know, that these prophecies are going to wind up being true, and they're going to wind up betraying Macbeth. Banquo told us Macbeth should have listened. He didn't. Instead, he listens to the prophecies. I think that we have to deal with the political here. First of all, there's this 8 kings with the ghost of Banquo. They're all too like the spirit of Banquo. The crowns sear his eyeballs. And they keep coming and they keep coming. And this line from Banquo stretches out forever. And again, we talked about the fact that King James traces his line to Banquo. We talked about how Shakespeare more than likely hid Banquo's involvement in the killing of Duncan because King James is paying the bills. Your textbook talked about people, or the twofold balls and treble scepters, that was more than likely something associated with King James. We're tying King James to Banquo. They're all his. And they're coming, and they're coming, and they're coming. And we're making King James look good through Banquo. And Macbeth is seeing the evil Macbeth is seeing that Banquo will indeed be the progenitor of kings. Also, I want to talk about continuing to please the patron. The country sinks beneath the yoke of Macbeth. He is an untitled tyrant and bloody sceptered. In the play, he is contrasted with Edward the Confessor, who was holy and wonderful and perfect. But notice the bold thing in the right hand. To succeeding royalty, Edward the Confessor leaves the healing benediction. The blessings of God that came to Edward the Confessor are left to all subsequent royalty, including King James. God, King, people. And King James is now being part of that lineage from Edward the Confessor, as well as Banquo. He's got a healing benediction. The patron is being pleased. The patron is being pandered to. And I am sorry for all the P alliteration. Finally, I think I want to talk about Machiavelli. If you haven't taken a political science class that mentions Machiavelli, I urge you to find one and take it. Machiavelli is famous, and I should probably say infamous, for the idea that one should divorce power from morality. Malcolm gives us the perfect example of what that would have been like for a king. Macbeth is bloody, luxurious, avaricious, false, deceitful, sudden, malicious, smacking of every sin that has a name. But Malcolm says, I'm going to want every woman you got. Your wives, your daughters, your matrons, your maids. I'm going to want them all. Macduff says, yeah, we can do that. It's not good, but we have enough willing dames. There cannot be that vulture in you to devour so many as will to greatness dedicate themselves. Perhaps there's a bit of misogyny here in Macduff as well, that plenty of women want to sleep with the king. Nonetheless, Machiavelli says we're going to divorce morality from power. And Malcolm and Macduff seem to see that this bit of, or Macduff seems to see that this bit of morality can indeed be divorced from power. Then Malcolm says, I'm going to cut off the nobles for their lands, desire the jewels, the houses, and he's just going to keep doing it. And interestingly, Macduff says, yeah, stealing property is worse than sleeping with all the women. Now, there's this idea, I think, in the early speeches that perhaps the women aren't all going to be volunteering to sleep with Malcolm. But Macduff says that this is worse. So again, we might have a little misogyny. The sword of slaying kings, the pernicious root, it's portable if there's other graces weighed. So Macduff is saying you still have to have some morality. And so while I think the two are having a conversation that illustrates what Machiavelli implies can and should happen, they're not going full on Machiavelli. They are not completely divorcing morality from rule, morality from power. Malcolm says, I don't have these king becoming graces. I don't have justice. I don't have verity, which means truth. I don't have temperance, stableness, bounty, perseverance, mercy, lowliness, devotion, patience, courage, fortitude. I don't have any of that. And Macduff's response is, then you shouldn't be king. Heck, you shouldn't even be worthy of living. But Machiavelli, on the other hand, said, "Therefore it is unnecessary for a prince to have all the good qualities I have enumerated, but it is very necessary to appear to have them. And I shall dare to say this also, that to have them and always observe them is injurious, and that to appear to have them is useful. To appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, and upright, and to be so, but with a mind so framed that should you require not to be so, you may able and know how to change to the opposite." So although these guys are approaching the level of Machiavelli when they discuss divorcing morality from power, Machiavelli is saying fake it till you make it, and don't even worry about making it. Just be able to fake it well. And I think that Malcolm and Macduff and Shakespeare in the presence of King James don't want to completely divorce morality from power. They want King James to see himself as part of that heir to Edward the Confessor. They want part of that morality to remain. I don't believe I have a daily writing. I'm going to click here just for the second. No, I don't. I don't have a daily writing. I hope to see you in class on Wednesday. Remember the quiz on Friday. Hope everybody has a good Monday.